Very bad. Oh my god, I've ruined it. Okay,
No,
well, that's
your
supposed to
time
be
is up.
a skin, but it's it's a blob.
Welcome to Drawesome Debs. For those of you who are new to this channel, this is a video series where I interview indie game developers with a twist. For every question that I ask them, they have to initially answer it with a drawing, which I then try to interpret. We'll see how well my interpretations go. Let me know if you do better in the comments below, though I do have to say I did pretty good with this one. Full disclosure, this is the second time that this interview has been done. I made sure to refresh the questions for the second go ahead, but I lost all the footage for the first interview because I didn't have it saved to the right drive, and my drive ran out of space really early on in the previous interview. So if you hear Grundislav Games or Francisco talking about things that we talked about yesterday, that's why. He was talking about the original interview questions. We do our best to go over everything that we had talked about previously. If you hear something glazed over briefly, that is what is missing. Today we are going to interview Grundislav, a veteran of the indie industry, who has released 4 commercial projects: A Golden Wake, Shardlight, Lamplight City, and just this year, Rosewater. Each of these games is a unique take on the adventure game genre, and I would highly recommend that you give them a chance even if you haven't played an adventure game before. They have fantastic writing, and I feel that the puzzles are pretty logical. Even if you don't do something the right way and you technically fail, you don't lock yourself out of the game. You don't have to reload a save and try again. You can go through and experience the game in its entirety still. And then if you want to go back and get the right answer and figure out things that you may have missed, you can do that on another playthrough. It adds value to multiple playthroughs for adventure games, which is something that you don't often see in the genre. So let's go ahead and start our interview with Francisco now.
Hello, my name is Francisco Gonzalez. I am an indie adventure game developer. I've been making indie adventure games for about 24 years now. First as freeware and then commercially. I've been making them commercially since 2014. You might know my work: A Golden Wake, Shardlight, Lamplight City, and the very recently released Rosewater. I'm based in Brooklyn, New York, and I am pretty much a solo developer operating under the studio name of Grundislav Games.
So before we get started into things, can you give us a little bit of background on your developer name, Grundislav? Where does that come from?
So Grundislav, according to my 11th grade history teacher, was the ancient Germanic form of Gonzalez, but apparently he got it slightly wrong because, or maybe the internet lies to me, I don't know. But when I looked it up many years later on Google, apparently the actual correct form is Gundisalv. But anyway, he had written it on the board. He had written Grundislav equals Gonzalez, and when I said, "What does that mean?" and he explained, and then all of my friends started calling me Grundislav going forward. And so I just decided to adopt it as my online handle when I started doing more things online, and it just kind of stuck, and I've never bothered to change it. So,
Well,
and it's alliterative. I like a nice alliterative Grundislav games.
that's a good point. And then I know you said you're mostly solo. I know you had mentioned yesterday that you have people that help with the music in your games. Is that one of the main things that other people do? Which parts of the game development do you hire out for help with?
Yeah, so mainly it's music that I hire out. I do all of the writing and the design and the programming and the art and the animation. And occasionally in more recent projects, I've outsourced some more of that stuff. So for Rosewater, I outsourced a couple of art tasks. There was a set of illustrations and some cards that needed some graphics that I decided to outsource to some people that I wanted to work with. But yeah, it's mostly just been me and my now fiance. On Lamplight City, she was the script editor, and on Rosewater, she was the script editor, and she also wrote like the diary entries and all of the journals, and she did the script editing as well, and she helped me write some dialogue. So yeah, but mostly as far as like the rest of the production of assets, art wise and coding wise, it's all me.
That's a lot of work.
It is. That's why Rosewater took 6 years.
It makes sense. It's
Yeah.
great that your partner can help you with some of that, though. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great to have somebody who knows what I'm doing and understands what I'm doing and isn't just like, "Why are you in the basement all day?"
All right, well, let's get started into our first question today then. Who are some of your biggest inspirations in game development? These can be other developers, artists, writers, just who inspires you the most?
I'm trying to think past versus now versus I don't know. This is cliche, but go with it.
So you can start drawing now.
I have to find the colors. Hold on. This is probably cheating, but okay, there we go.
Interesting. You Died makes me think Sierra games, just because that's what I associate with Sierra games. Dying repeatedly.
Yep. Yep.
Roberta Williams, classic,
Yeah.
classic.
Yeah, the classic death message in King's Quest IV where she pops up with her smiling face being like, next time be more careful.
Yeah. What were some of the first Sierra games that you played, and what are some of your favorites of theirs?
So the first Sierra game I ever played was King's Quest V on the NES, which was a horrible port, but somehow I got through it and I was able to finish it. I don't even think I needed the walkthrough, which I have no idea how I did now, because as a child, King's Quest V is pretty infamous for having some really obtuse puzzles. But I definitely played the King's Quest series early on. I loved King's Quest VI. That's one of my favorite ones in that series. But I also love Gabriel Knight. Sins of the Fathers was a great one. Conquest of the Longbow is a underrated one in my opinion. And Quest for Glory 4 is another one of my favorites. But yeah, I say Roberta Williams because she pretty much pioneered the graphical adventure game with King's Quest 1. So I'm going back to the roots and saying that she's the one. I have not ever interacted with her. I had the fortune of seeing her at the Adventure Game Fan Fair last summer in Tacoma, but I did not have the nerve to go up to her and introduce myself or talk to her. The best I did was they had a little award ceremony and they gave me an award, and I was like, "Oh, I can't believe I'm being honored in the same room as Ken and Roberta." And I pointed at them and I made eye contact with them, but that was it. But I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't played the Sierra games, and so I credit Roberta Williams with making me want to explore more adventure games, for better or for worse, design wise.
They're classics for a reason, and
Yeah.
I feel like most people that love adventure games have some appreciation for Sierra to some extent at least. Do you prefer Sierra games over LucasArts games? I feel
That's
like
the
there's kind
eternal
of
question, isn't it?
I know.
I can't say I have a particular preference for one over the other. It depends. The thing is, if you look at their output, they were both operating roughly for about the same amount of time. But Sierra churned out way more games than LucasArts did. I mean, LucasArts has about 14 adventure games, and Sierra has like 30 something because they had their long running series and they made a lot of sequels and stuff. And LucasArts, I feel like LucasArts games have higher production values overall. I mean, obviously, they had Lucas money backing them. They tend to be more wacky comedy games, which is fine. Sierra has a little bit more diversity in that they have some series that are more realistic, some series that are more grounded, like the Gabriel Knight games, which are more historical, supernatural drama. They have the Police Quest series, which isn't great, but is, very strict police procedural. They have the King's Quest, which is fantasy, not really comedy, it's whimsy. And then, Space Quest and Leisure Suit Larry obviously are like their comedy games. And then you have the outliers like the Conquests of Camelot and Conquest of the Longbow and the Laurel Bow games and things like that. So I feel like there's a lot more Sierra games. There's a lot more mediocre and Sierra games, but I feel like there are far more A plus S tier LucasArts games than there are Sierra games. And I'm probably going to get a lot of heat for saying this from somebody. But I don't have a strict preference. I think both of them have their pros and their cons. And if I had to pick a side, I would just be very boring and say I like both for different reasons. So
That's fair though. They both contributed a lot and have
yeah.
their strengths and their weaknesses. So One other question about that. Why Quest for Glory 4 specifically out of all the Quest for Glory games?
Because Quest for Glory 4 is the one where it's still silly and it still has that Quest for Glory sense of humor. It's like the darker one. It
Mm.
has that sort of pseudo Lovecraft subplot happening. I don't know, just there's something about the cozy Slavic valley and the little village. It appeals the most to me. And it has one thing that none of the other ones do, which is that it has a much smaller cast of characters, and
Mm.
so there's this real sense of progression as you first arrive in the village and everyone is very distrustful of you and cold towards you because you're a stranger. And as you go helping them out, they start warming up to you. And at the end, you genuinely feel like you made friends with everybody in the village. And that is the best feeling in that game. None of the other ones really have that to that degree because I think the scope of them are a lot larger. Like there's some characters that yeah, you make friends with and stuff, but it's not to that extent. So yeah, that's why I like 4 the best.
It sounds like you kind of took a similar approach with Rosewater from what you've described of trying to get to know people and feel more connected to characters as you've played throughout the game. Do you feel that your love for Quest for Glory 4 might have partially inspired that?
Oh, sure, yeah. Quest for Glory 4 has always been a very influential game for me. I mean, I feel like partly because it's a hybrid adventure RPG game, I think that's where it comes from, because especially in games where you have companion characters and in more modern RPGs, the core focus there is building relationships with them. I would say I was probably influenced specifically more by Fallout New Vegas in
Mm.
that respect, but definitely Quest for Glory 4 has an influence, yes.
Let's get into our next question now. Then. I asked for your favorite overall character yesterday. So, to spice things up, we're going to ask for your favorite video game character today.
This one is tricky because this is one of those situations where I'm drawing a blank right now, and I know that tomorrow at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm gonna think, "Oh, I should have picked that one. It was so obvious." Let me think. Let me think. All right, I'm gonna go with my gut here.
You can start drawing now. Bigfoot. This looks like Bigfoot.
This is really bad anatomically, but whatever.
That is totally fine. You have 10 seconds left. Looks less like Bigfoot at this point, but... Alright. Your time
Okay.
is up.
Okay.
Hmm. Looks like there's pizza involved.
That's just a clue. That's not necessarily a realistic prop associated with this character, but it's a nudge in the right direction of where you should be looking.
Hmm. You know, it's funny because my first instinct was Bigfoot, but now the person's obviously wearing a robe. But then the fact that you made the robe a little bit red and put pizza makes me think of Devil May Cry, but it doesn't look anything like Devil May Cry. Like, that's not what it is. But I don't know if I have any better guesses than that. I don't know, a Bigfoot version of Dante from Devil May Cry. That's my final answer. Let's take a look at what this
Okay.
actually is. Ezio Auditor from Assassin's Creed 2. I have never played the Assassin's Creed games, so tell me a little bit about Assassin's Creed 2 and this character.
I'm an Assassin's Creed apologist. I know that not all the games are great and they get repetitive, but I love Assassin's Creed. I love historical fiction and I love the Assassin's Creed games because you get to explore quote unquote period accurate representations of the particular places that they're set in. And one of my favorite games in the series is Assassin's Creed 2. The main character of that one, along with two other games, is Ezio Auditore da Firenze, which is he is the Italian Renaissance assassin. And I think he's a lot of people's favorite character in that series just because you spend the most time with him. I mean, over the course of 3 games, you kind of get to see him go from dumb teenager to elder assassin. But he's just cool. He's a flawed character. He's very arrogant and very full of himself when he starts, but he comes to be one of the best assassin leaders of the game. And he's just fun. He's a fun character. He's like, "Oh, I'm Ezio." Later in the series, when he gets older and he jumps, he's like, "Ouch!" So,
That's cute. How is
mm,
pizza associated with him?
because he's Italian. In case you thought it was just a generic assassin from Assassin's Creed, I was trying to show you that he's the Italian one, so it's the pizza.
I'm sure that would have helped if I had any knowledge about Assassin's Creed. I've heard a lot of people say that the first 3 Assassin's Creed games are the best ones. Are those the ones that have this character?
Well, the first Assassin's Creed does not have Ezio. It's Altair, who is the first character that I mean, obviously it's the first game, so it's the first character. Assassin's Creed 2 introduced Ezio, but apparently because he was such a popular character that they made 2 spin-off games that
Hmm.
like I say, continue his story. They're not numbered in the series. They're Assassin's Creed with subtitles. The 3 games that have Ezio are Assassin's Creed 2, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and Assassin's Creed Revelations. And then we go into Assassin's Creed 3, which introduces Connor, who is not very well liked because people think he's kind of boring, even though he is actually pretty interesting. He's a little flat emotionally, so I think that's probably why. I don't think there's been repeats of characters ever since that. So Ezio's the one that's gotten the most games of like the 25 Assassin's Creed games that there are now. I don't think the first 3 are necessarily the best ones. One is a bit repetitive gameplay-wise. The second one was where they rethought their design and they had it be more open world with different varieties of missions and things like that. And then they just started kinda getting repetitive in general after that.
Lucky him getting multiple games when nobody else does, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. If you had to give Harley Legere superpowers for her own superhero spinoff, what would they
Oh.
be? All right. You can start drawing now. It looks like a tornado right now. This is totally telepathy. You have 10 more seconds. Okay, I'm thinking telepathy. That's my interpretation of this. Mind reading, basically.
Same thing.
A little
Same thing.
different, but
Yeah.
why mind reading?
She's a journalist and she wants to get answers, and so it would be much easier for her to just be able to read people's minds and be able to tell when they're lying or what they're thinking or what information they actually have rather than going through the whole process of coaxing it out of them or punching them or whatever. So, yeah, it would be beneficial for her. If it was a game where she was a superhero with mind reading powers, it would be a very short game because it would just be like, well, that's it. But, we're not talking about that. We're just talking theoretical. So I'm okay with that.
I feel like it may be harder than people might think because I feel
Mm,
like even if you're trying to get information out of people, I don't know about you, but I'm not thinking about everything all the time. So you've got to
that's true.
get their mind on the appropriate thing to be able to get the information that you want out of them in the first place, right? So it
Yeah.
may not be as short as you would anticipate, though I'm sure it would be a lot easier still. Are you a fan of superhero media at all, or is that not your
I'm
cup of
not.
tea?
I'm actually not really at all into superheroes. The only Marvel movies that I've seen have been the 3 Spider-Man ones.
Which ones?
the Tom Holland ones, the home ones. What was it? Homecoming, No Way Home, and Far From Home.
Hmm.
Weirdly enough, I saw them all on planes. They were like I would take the plane and I'd be like, "Oh, is the new Spider-Man movie out? Okay, let me watch it." I would say I'm not really into superhero movies or anything. I guess if I had to name my 2 favorite superheroes, only by what media of theirs most I've consumed and mostly being video games, it would be Spider-Man and Batman. I still haven't played Spider-Man 2, but I played the original Marvel Spider-Man and Miles Morales, and I played all of the Batman Arkham games, and I really enjoyed all of those. As far as movies, comics, TV shows, I'm not particularly enamored of superheroes, really. As far as the older Spider-Man ones, I saw the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 1 and 3. I never saw the second one, which is apparently the best one of the 3, and I never saw any of the Andrew Garfield ones. The whole multiverse thing was kind of lost on me.
So you haven't seen the animated ones either?
I did see Into the Spider-Verse, but I didn't see the sequel. But I liked Into the Spider-Verse, that was fun.
Well, we know that Harley's not gonna be getting a superhero spinoff then, but
No,
that's
sorry.
okay. That's okay, I wasn't really expecting one anyway, but
Okay.
I don't think anybody was.
I don't know how you would really effectively do a superhero adventure game. You would just use your powers on everything.
Maybe if you were a superhero but had kind of useless powers.
Mm. Or you were like a superhero whose powers had been taken away and you had to figure out how to get them back or something, I don't know.
That sounds like a Metroidvania though at that
Yeah,
point.
it does. Yeah. I don't think that point and click adventure is the genre for superhero stories.
Which character in the games you've created do you identify with the most? All right, you can start drawing now. You know, my guess for this is the main character in Lamplight City that you're playing as. That's who it looks like right off the bat.
I never really thought about that actually, but
You have 10 more seconds.
very bad. Oh my god, I've ruined it. Okay,
No,
that's
your
supposed to
time
be
is up.
that's supposed to be a skin, but it's a blob.
That's okay. That's my guess. I'm trying to remember his name. I literally was just playing this morning, but Nouns and I are not friends.
It's not him anyway, so it's fine.
What is his name?
Miles
Like
Fordham.
Miles Fordham. Thank you. All right, let's look at who this actually is. It's because of the scruffy facial hair and the slightly longer hair. It's similar vibe. And the blue jacket. I guess it's black, isn't it? But black and blue are close enough. Simon Booth from the Ben Jordan series. So I know that the Ben Jordan series were some of the freeware games that you did before doing commercial projects. Can you tell me more about the series as a whole and Simon Booth as a character?
Yeah, so the Ben Jordan series was a series of 8 games, which ended up being 10 because I remade the first 2. But basically, each game was a short episodic game that was self-contained, but also the whole series had an overarching plot, and each game was a case. And the idea was that Ben Jordan was a paranormal investigator who was investigating local actual established folklore slash legend slash creatures because I didn't want it to be like a monster of the week thing. I wanted it to be a little bit more interesting. Again, tying in with like historical fiction. There were a few where I kind of just made it up specifically like what it was. It was based on actual stuff. So about halfway through in the fourth game, I decided to introduce other paranormal investigators because that one took place a supposedly haunted house that really exists in London. And so Simon Booth was one of the other ones, and Alice Wilkins, and there was a couple of other characters. Ben, in the later episodes, teams up with Simon and Alice, and they become this little paranormal investigating trio. And there's like a romantic plot with him and Alice, and Simon's the best friend. And then, spoilers, Simon dies. But Simon, of those characters, I think I identify with the most because everybody always thinks that Ben Jordan is me and I'm a self insert. And I think that's partly because I was very lazy and I just took pictures of myself for the main character title screens and just photoshopped my hair red because I just dressed Ben Jordan like I used to dress at the time, white t shirt and green cargo pants. But personality wise, I always felt like I was writing myself more when I would write Simon because Simon was the jokester, even though he was English. He was sort of based on a roommate that I had who I'm still friends with, who's English, but personality wise and like his quips and stuff, it was more me than Ben was because Ben was always straight laced and inquisitive and typical adventure game character.
Hmm.
But Simon was personality wise a lot more with me, so I always identified with him more than Ben. Don't ask me why I killed him off. I have this thing where I like to manipulate players' emotions by taking away what they love. So I'm very cruel that way.
It's great when games will make you feel something. So Ben Jordan himself seems like he was too straight-laced, too straightforward for you to identify with him.
Ben was a lot more. I definitely believe in the paranormal, and there has to be a paranormal explanation for this. And I'm not like that.
Mhm.
I am very much agnostic in the sense of feel like there's a logical explanation. I'm not automatically going to be like, well, it has to be a ghost.
Mhm.
So it's been a long time since I played the series or even had anything to do with the series. So I couldn't tell you 100% what Ben's traits are. I would not be surprised if he doesn't have particularly strong traits because I was still inexperienced writing wise back then. So he's
Mhm.
can be pretty one note. But overall, I don't necessarily relate to him as much as Simon. The way I drew him, he looks like he got really hungry and stuck his face in like a raspberry pie or something. And he's just like, I don't care. I'm just eating this pie. So
It kind of
sorry,
made
Simon.
me think of that scene in The Office. There's an iconic scene in it where there's a training dummy and one of the characters cuts the face off the training dummy and puts it on his face. I don't know. That's kind of the vibe that this gave me.
Yeah, it's very, very Silence of the Lambs.
Where do you feel you have grown the most throughout your game development career? You are free to start drawing now. The fact that that head turned out so pointy reminds me of Phineas from Phineas and Ferb. All right, you've got 10 more seconds. This is definitely art skills. Phineas's art skills and being able to draw perspective better.
So I didn't intend to make it so pointy. It just happened to be that way.
I
So
think sometimes the application kind of lags out and makes your
yeah,
drawings funky in a way that they
but it gives them character.
it gives you Phineas. That's what it gives you. I think it's Phineas. Phineas is the one with the pointy head, and Ferb's the one with the like rectangle head, I think.
I I've never seen, so I wouldn't know. I'm sorry.
Yes, your art skills because you learned perspective.
I mean, that's not the only thing I learned, but that was probably the most important thing that I learned. I didn't quite know how to draw in perspective when I was drawing backgrounds on paper. So even though I was coloring them in with my digital art tablet thing, the base line drawings were still very wonky. And so I definitely feel like I've improved my art. With Lamplight City, I felt like it was okay. With Rosewater, I feel like it's the first game where I'm like, yeah, this is good. Like, people will like this. And I've been very lucky that most of the reviews, all of the reviews that have mentioned the art have praised it. So I guess I have improved. But I'm always pushing myself and I want to improve even more.
I wonder if in the future you're gonna look back at Rosewater and be like, man, this is terrible in comparison to
I hope so. I hope so because it means I'll have grown. So I mean, I look back on Lamplight City now and I'm like, wow, this is pretty janky. I could have done this so much better. But the important thing to me is that when I release something, I want to feel like it's the best that I could do at that moment with my particular skill set.
Really, you can just compare yourself to your past self and just hope that you're consistently improving. So I think that's a great mentality.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously I'm not a professional artist. Like, that's not what I dedicate myself to all the time. If I spent the past 6 years improving my art skills instead of making a game, then yeah, I'd probably be really good. But I'm doing other things as well. So I can't
Hmm.
dedicate 100% of my time to getting better at art. It's a slow process, but I feel like improving different bits of my craft as I go so that I, as a whole, can do something good, I think is better than just focusing specifically on one skill set.
Yeah, it makes it so you can actually put something out there instead of being
Yeah.
hung up on one aspect of it. I'm excited to play Rosewater and see the differences between Lamplight City and Rosewater. As I've been playing it, though, people have told me that they like the art in it a lot. So you're probably your own worst critic.
There's definitely bits towards the end in the last case where I can see where I was running out of time and feeling the pressure of having to get the game out, so I cut corners background-wise
Mm.
and animation-wise and things like that.
What kind of corners do you feel that you cut when you were doing the end stuff? Not to draw attention to negative things here, but
Oh, well, I mean, there's one background in particular I know that it's very weird looking, just the way it's designed. And there's a few characters, their portraits are really not great. And I guess animation-wise, it's not that the animations are bad, it's just that I could have used an animation but didn't include it or something. Stuff like that. If I had had time to go back and improve it or redo it, I would have, but I didn't. I
Mm.
just kind of kept it as is and hoped nobody would really notice. I don't think there's anything that's glaringly inconsistent where it's like you go in and it's a stick figure or what. But as far as keeping up the quality all across the board, I think that there are a few backgrounds. If you really stop and look, you're like, I don't know about this one.
That's the great thing about those kinds of things, though, with artwork in general, both in 3D and 2D environments, is that I think a lot of people don't really know if something's wonky unless they do
Hmm.
artwork themselves. It's not noticeable to the average user, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So I have to preface this one a little bit. Danganronpa has this thing where all of the characters in the game are ultimate students. So it's a death game. And as part of it, there are all these high schoolers that are trapped in this school and they all have ultimate abilities. So you'll have like the ultimate writer, the ultimate fan fiction writer, the ultimate baseball player, the ultimate lucky student. So my question for you here is if each of your games personified had to have an ultimate ability, what would their ultimate abilities be?
Ooh. Okay. Okay. And it can be as mundane as
Yes.
possible. Okay.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah.
Ooh.
They should
Ooh.
be supernatural things, not like flying or
Right,
anything
right,
like
right, right.
that.
The ultimate ability to do certain things, huh? Okay. Don't know if this is an ability, but whatever. We'll go with that. All right, let me look at this so that I can remember. Okay. All right. All right.
You could start drawing now. Looks like he's flipping someone off. He's got a very big coat on. That's my interpretation of that. You have 10 more seconds.
Oh gosh.
Oh, you know what? That's totally a magnifying glass, but I like to think of it as a really big coat, a really fluffy coat. Oh,
Okay. There we go. No problem. I'm gonna. Whoop, there we go. Okay. Just a little under the buzzer thing there.
that's totally fine. Okay, let's start with Rosewater first. It seems like
Mm.
the ultimate friendship or something like that.
Yes.
Is that actually what it is?
Yes.
Heck
You got
yeah.
that. Yeah, you got that 100%. Fantastic.
I'm thinking with Lamplight City that it's probably like the ultimate detective or something of that
Yeah,
sort.
2 for 2.
Heck yeah, I've got 2 more to go. I still like it being a big coat rather than because it looks like the front part, like where it would be
How does it
floofy in the middle. Like this, I don't know if you probably can't see what I'm highlighting.
Yeah, no, I can see what you're highlighting. Is it like a top-down view that we're seeing here of the coat?
I think so, like, this is, like, the front where there would be, like you can see the inside a little bit around the
Oh, you mean like
head.
the hood?
Yeah, the hood of a coat.
Oh, right,
Mhm.
right, right. Gotcha,
And
gotcha.
then
Yeah,
this is,
okay, I
like,
see
the
that. Yeah.
back top part. That's
Right, right, right. Okay.
I like that interpretation, but it's definitely Ultimate Detective. These other 2 are gonna be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
This first one,
Bear in
the
mind
Golden
that it's
Wing.
supposed to be a thumbs up, not someone flipping them off. It just got really mangled in the drawing.
I don't know, the ultimate good job. I This is a check mark, like, the ultimate finished task, maybe. I think that's what I'm gonna stick with there, and then for Shardlight, I feel like the red kinda reminds me of, like, Red Cross, the ultimate survival, the ultimate or s yeah, the ultimate survivor, the ultimate healing power, something like that, maybe? Alright, let's see
You
if the
got
same
3. You got 3 out of 4. That's great.
I'm glad the Red Cross was a great way to do that. I will make a ultimate persuade people, the ultimate ability to persuade people, that makes sense, and then the ultimate ability to heal people. Ultimate detective, that one's pretty obvious, and the ultimate friend. That's so wholesome. I'm excited to play Rosewater. That sounds like that's gonna be a lot of fun.
That's
Um
really funny you say that because wholesome and cozy are like 2 adjectives that have been thrown around a lot with regard to Rosewater, which is great. But it's also funny because I feel like some people weren't expecting that. I guess they were expecting a hyper violent Tarantino style Western. But no, I mean, I always said in the marketing and like interviews and stuff that I always wanted Rosewater to feel like you were going on a road trip with your friends.
Mhm.
So the whole aspect of friendship and camaraderie is central and found family and stuff. That's like the central theme of Rosewater. It's nice that people find it cozy and enjoyable in that aspect.
I'm excited to experience it myself. And I feel like those things don't really have to be mutually exclusive anyway. There can be drama and things that you're having to work through and still be wholesome if you have people like
Oh,
going
sure,
together.
and
So,
there's plenty. It's just not all the time like, "Oh my god, someone's gonna blow my head open," you know? So
yeah. I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about Shardlight. I know we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and you had said that it's very survival based and said that it's also the most violent of your games. So, seeing it as the ultimate ability to heal people is a little bit surprising to me, I guess, because of that. Could you explain a little bit more why you would assign that to that game?
and I guess healing it would be in the literal sense of, like, curing. Shardlight at its core, the conflict of the story is that the main character, Amy, is trying to find a cure for this deadly disease that's been
Mhm,
ravaging the place where she lives for the past 20 years.
mhm,
So I guess that's why, because it is violent and it's about survival and it's about surviving in a post-apocalyptic world and stuff. But it's also about friendship because Amy depends on her community and her friends to succeed and to fight back and resist against this oppressive government and ultimately change things and help someone lead a revolution and find this cure for the disease. So that's why, because it's ultimately a story about making things better. That's healing, right? Like making things better or making someone feel better.
With a golden wake, you have the ultimate ability to persuade people, and that's because of the oil and kind of swindling nature. So I feel like that's pretty.
Well, I mean, real estate is it's not the most wholesome necessarily business, especially in the setting in which a golden wake takes place, which is the Florida land boom of the 1920s, where there were a lot of people out to swindle others because there was plenty of people who would get told about these beautiful waterfront properties and they would buy these properties sight unseen, and then they would come down to Florida and they had literally just purchased like swampland that was worthless, and then they were stuck with it. But as far as the persuasion thing goes, one of the major mechanics of the gameplay is there's certain sequences where you have to persuade someone, and you get this close-up view, and you have to kinda, like, gauge by their reaction and their facial expression how good a job you're doing. Alfie Banks is a real estate guy, so his thing is he talks, and he has to persuade people, he has to sell. That's where that comes from.
Another question that I have about your games holistically, I've noticed as you talk about A Golden Wake and what I know about Lamplight City and Rosewater, that they are based a lot on our world and a lot of historical context, which makes sense with things that you've talked about and you're interested in historical fiction, that kind of thing. But Shardlight kind of seems like the odd man out here. Am I right in my understanding of that?
Well, it's interesting because when I originally conceived Shardlight, I wanted to set it during medieval times during the Black Plague. So it
Mm.
was gonna be historical. But when I started talking with Ben Chandler, who I designed the game with, who did the art for the game, we decided to shift it to a post-apocalyptic future, but it definitely had its roots in that. And I mean, as I mentioned, the oppressive government in question, they literally call themselves the aristocracy and they dress up like French era fops and they wear porcelain masks.
Mhm.
And the leader of the resistance is called Danton, and the aristocracy name themselves after Roman emperors. So there is a lot of historical elements to Shardlight. So I guess it does fit in. It is different in the sense that yeah, it's like a future post-apocalyptic setting, but I mean, it definitely has the same DNA running through it.
Do you feel that it was challenging at all to try to make it more futuristic? Or do you think because, like you were just saying, it has that same core DNA that it came pretty naturally to create the game world and wasn't any more of a challenge than your other games?
Yeah, it wasn't really more of a challenge. I mean, it was definitely the first time that I had to do world building
Mm.
because with Ben Jordan and with A Golden Wake, they were set in real places. So I just kind of had to research and create that. But this was obviously creating a whole future timeline. It wasn't based on any particular place. I sort of vaguely imply that it's an isolated island continent, which could or could not be an Australia, but who knows if it's even in our own world. We don't really even
Mhm.
name the country or anything because it's not important
Mhm.
to the story. So I could go back and retroactively say, oh, actually, this is set in Vespuccia in the future, but I'm obviously not going to do that. But it was definitely the first time that I got into the exercise of building this new world from nothing, which I later went and did with Vespuccia with the alternate history thing. But challenging, I mean, even though it is in the future, it's not futuristic. It's not like, oh, we have this new technology or anything.
Mhm.
It's ultimately a world where this cataclysmic event happened and they had to restart essentially from scratch. So it's kind of like medieval times where there's this class divide and there's the royalty and power and the serfs digging around in the dirt and stuff. So I think there's mechanical stuff because Amy is a mechanic,
Mm.
but
Mhm.
it's not future technology to the point where it's like, oh, this is the ruins of a futuristic civilization. And it's not like a cyberpunk thing.
In your time working with things that are based in reality versus creating your own worlds, do you have a preference for one or the other? I feel like they would each present their own
Hmm.
challenge. If you're building off of reality, I feel like if you get facts wrong, then
Yeah.
people can call you out on that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But there's also less that you have to be creating from scratch versus doing that in your own world. At least you can't get anything wrong in your own world, but
Right. You have to have some sort of consistency and believability as well, which I think is less challenging than being historically accurate. That was the thing with Vespuccia, with Lamplight City. I originally just was going to have it be just a straightforward, like 19th century detective game,
Mhm.
but when I realized that I didn't wanna be beholden to the history, I didn't want it to be, "Well, this has to be in London per se." That's when I kind of just decided, "Well, I'll do an alternate history thing." Because with A Golden Wake, I wanted to be historically accurate, and I made the history the most important thing in my mind when I was designing it, and I think that was to the detriment of the overall story and some of the characters and stuff. Because if I had taken some more liberties and made it more of a relatable story, I guess it already is kind of a relatable story, but I feel like there's themes in there that kind of went unexplored that I could have made it a little bit more. And I talked about the airplane airplane puzzle yesterday.
Mhm.
That was definitely a thing that I put in because I was like, well, I have to show off this really cool, obscure thing that happened where I didn't really need to do that. Instead of telling an actual interesting bit about why Alfie's feeling this way, it's like, nope, you gotta go get this airplane and then do this stupid puzzle that is badly programmed and will make people upset. So that's definitely the risk of doing something like that. Which, going back to the Ben Jordan games, again, like they're set in real places and they're based on quote unquote real paranormal phenomenon, but there's more wiggle room there because even though it is in these real places, you still have some flexibility because it does deal with this element that's you can make up yourself.
Yeah, you have the supernatural stuff, which makes it makes it a little easier to be more flexible with things. Because I think even for people that do believe in it, there's so much
Mm,
variation in what
mm.
exactly that means. So it gives you some flexibility with what's happening there for sure. Let's start into the next question. What changed the most about Rosewater from the beginning of development to release? You are free to start drawing now. This kind of gives me branching storyline vibes. It looks like the the maps that you see in games like are we done with
I'm
this?
done. I'm done.
Perfect. Yeah, you only took like half the time. It reminds me of the maps that you see in the storylines for what are those games called? Man, I told you I'm bad with nouns.
No, it's good. Okay.
The like Heavy Rain and Detroit Become
Oh yeah,
Human
yeah,
and
yeah.
that
Sure,
kind of
sure.
thing.
The floor chart stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Looks like those flowcharts. It kind of seems like maybe there was intended to be more choices that you maybe had in the middle that would lead to the ending. And then you took some of that variation out to focus on the end. That's kind of what it looks like here. Let's take a look at the description. The initial scope, the trajectory of the story was changed to be way less branching. That makes sense. Are you disappointed that you had to make it less of a branching storyline?
No, because if I hadn't, I would still be working on the game. This was a decision that I made fairly early on, so it's not like I was, like, halfway through the project and then I was like, "Oh, no." I can show you, I mean, I still have my notepad right here that I wrote everything on.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
Originally, you can see here, basic game structure, right? You see this whole bit's crossed out here.
Mhm,
Because originally the basic game structure, it's actually pretty similar to how it ended up as far as the way Act 2 works. But the idea was that at the end of Act 2, there was gonna be a decision that you had to make, and the way that the final act turned out would be completely different based on which of the 3 choices you had. So it was like, are you going to continue the search for the treasure? Are you gonna get revenge? Or are you going to do I forget what the 3rd one was. And it was
mhm,
gonna be completely different locations and stuff. But then I realized that that was way too much, so I was just like, "Okay, never mind. Let's scale this back, and we'll have the 3rd act take place in the same place, but I can change it up so that the way you get through Act 3 is different, but
mhm,
not completely different
mhm.
assets and locations and things like that."
Can you explain to me the challenges of writing branching storylines and keeping track of dialogue there with your different choices and that kind of thing?
It's really based on 2 aspects. It's the design phase and it's the writing phase. When I say writing, I mean the actual, like, words that are said by the characters. The design phase is a little easier because it's more thinking in broad strokes. As an example, I'll use the very first puzzle in Rosewater, which is you have to get into a theater. There's going to be somebody who's going to prevent you from getting into the theater. Who is this? And so then I designed the whole thing with like the kid you meet at the start and he tries to pickpocket you. So you already have this sort of relationship with him. It's not just a brand new character that you meet out of the blue. So it's this guy who tried to pickpocket you and he says, "Okay, well, I want you to get this thing back for me and I'll let you in." So at this point, because Harley is a former boxer, I thought, okay, well, this is cool. Let's do an opportunity here to take advantage of that and say, if you don't want to do this quest for this guy, you can just punch him and get into the theater, and that'll be fun. We can do that, or we can have him task you with getting this item for him, and then further design there is, well, how do we do this? Where is it? How do we get into the place where it is, et cetera, et cetera. And when it comes to actually writing this stuff, that's when you flesh it out. And that's when you start thinking, okay, well, what can we do here in the meantime? What if you try and bribe him? Let's have an option to bribe him just for people who want to try that. And then the result of that, or different ways that you can try and say, well, all right, I don't want to do it, but I'll do it because I feel sorry for your brother, or I'll do it because I want to get in, or shut up, I'm not doing it, right?
Mhm.
Keeping track of it, that's what design documents and stuff are for. When I was writing the dialogue, I basically broke it down into rooms, and I had different color coded boxes based on dialogue with NPCs that you just initiate, dialogue that was just cutscenes that you don't interact with, that just happens, or dialogue where in the middle of a cutscene the action stops and you have an input, and then the room descriptions and stuff like that. I would write D1, D2, D3, and those were the topics you could choose and what she would say. And then the scene continues, and then this one, this one, this one. And then if you said this one, then she says this. Or if you said this one, then she'll say this. It's a lot of writing, it's a lot of charts, but I tried not to get too crazy because I'm just one person. I guess this leads into just the idea of reactivity, which I think is very important for player engagement. When you say, yes, in this game, your choices matter, most people are like, yeah, right, sure.
Yeah.
Like maybe it'll be blue at the end instead of green or whatever. And it's true. It's really hard to effectively convey meaningful consequences in games, especially the smaller your team. The way to make it feel more meaningful is if you do take into account certain things that the player can do and actually acknowledge that in a way that the game tells you, yeah, I was paying attention when you made that choice. In the past, I've written all of the games in the engine as I've been writing them. With Rosewater, I wrote it as an external script. When you're writing it as you're coding it, in AGS at least, there is a specific function which is like, if dialogue name dot option has been chosen, three, then do this. Going back to what I was saying before, if the game goes out of its way to, in any small way, say, yes, I was listening when you did this, then it goes a long way in making the player feel like they did actually have some influence. That's why playtesting is so valuable, because they try things, and a lot of times they'll be like, well, why is it that I have this item but it doesn't work, and it has to be this specific item? And in cases like that, you can say, you're right, this item should work. Hopefully, it's easy enough that you can say, you're right, this item should work. Let's make it work as well. Sometimes you get a problem where, well, you had to go through this whole puzzle chain that advanced the story in order to get the item that does work. So using the other item would completely forego that, and then you would miss this entire chunk of the story. Then you have to think of some arbitrary reason why that item doesn't work. But then it also, if it's something that you didn't think of, but the player did, and you can justify why it doesn't work, then that gives you the opportunity to give the player more feedback.
Can you just briefly explain what rotoscoping is and how it's utilized in your games?
Sure. So rotoscoping is you film someone or something, like an animal or an object or whatever, and then you basically trace over it in order to create a more fluid, realistic animation. So the way I do it is on my phone, I'll film myself or others doing the action. Or in the case of it's like a horse or something, I go on YouTube and I'll get a video of like a horse walking. And on my computer, I'll go into a video editing program. I use Wondershare Filmora. And then I'll go through every fourth or fifth frame. I'll take an image until I get a loop, or if it's not a looping animation, until the animation is done. And then in Photoshop, I just put it together as an animation reel, and then I can preview it and see how it looks. And then once I'm happy with that, I resize it down to game size, and then I trace over it. That's how I do the bulk of my animations. And that's how I've been doing my animations since about 2004 through various different technologies. I used to have to take the pictures individually before I had a phone or any digital camera that had good video capabilities. So yeah, it's been a long process. It does take some practice, and it does take refinement, because there's different things to contend with, like angles and foreshortening and things like that. If you have a character who falls on the ground and they fall forward, you also have to take that into account that their scale is changing as that's happening.
Hmm.
So a lot of times I had to learn the great art of falling sideways. So it's not just, oh yeah, film something and trace over it. It is a technique. Yeah, I would say it probably is good for people who want to get started or beginners, but it's also not super easy either.
So do you only utilize that for your characters and certain animations there and do the environments completely separately? I would imagine that you might, just because environments, it is much more reliant on having proper perspective, and the objects in an environment may not match a perspective of like something that you're trying to look at.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, if it's environmental stuff, I found this great program called Juice FX. It's really more for pixel art, but it worked with my stuff too. It just kind of has different effects for things like wobbling and waves and stuff, and it's really good for, like, having foliage that moves. I
Mm.
have another program I use called Squirrel's Water Reflections, which is really good for water reflection. I rotoscoped stuff like flags waving a couple of times. Environments, it's usually just a mixture of other programs, and rotoscoping is mostly for living things.
Thanks for sharing more about that.
Sure.
All right, so next drawing question. If Constance Upton was a pizza, what kind would she be?
Okay, this is gonna be interesting.
I'm excited to see it. All right, you can start drawing now. Got the drippy cheese. I think that's a mushroom. Maybe sausage?
This isn't
Chicken!
what it
A chicken wing! This is a chicken wing pizza? Or a corn dog? But with a bone? That doesn't, that doesn't make any
Alright, I'm done. The only reason it's a bone is to clarify that it's chicken. It wouldn't
Oh.
really have a bone.
Like a chicken tender pizza, maybe? 'Cause that looks like ketchup and mustard on top of it. This is extra cheese, honey barbecue chicken. The honey and the barbecue makes sense. I'm
Yeah.
just over here thinking about it
No,
looks
it's
like a corn dog, but with a bone instead
it
of
does look like a corn dog with a bone. No, you're absolutely right, it does.
Okay, why would she be an extra cheese? I see the drippy cheese, hence the
Yeah,
extra cheese
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Why the extra cheese honey barbecue chicken?
So the honey barbecue chicken is because she's sweet and also, uh, barbecuey.
A little
Yeah, her sweet
spicy?
side. Yeah, a little spicy. And the extra cheese is because she's extra cheesy, she's always making cheesy jokes with Miles. I just feel like that's what she would enjoy eating as well. I'm actually getting really hungry. I kinda want a nice pizza right now.
There's never a bad time for pizza. Pizza's great.
No, there
So,
isn't.
what do you feel that your biggest strength is when it comes to game development?
Mm.
You can start drawing now. And the old head down there looks like he's slightly crazed.
I don't know what this is. It's an explosion. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. I love how this guy's like he's so horrified. Um I am thinking of dialogue, I suppose, between characters or just like storytelling maybe is what this is. Let's take a look. Telling a good story, storytelling.
Yes. Yeah. I'd like to think that my games have interesting stories, and I feel like the adventure game medium is my favorite way of telling stories.
Were video games your first time telling stories, or did you or do you do any other kind of writing on the side as well?
I don't. I actually, before I got into video games creatively, I wanted to make movies. And I did make little short, dumb movies, and I made little stories with action figures and stuff like that, and tried to do stop motion. So I've always been interested in narrative and telling a story through not just writing.
Well, it's just that. I do think that you've
Yeah.
done a great job with your games, and I think that's a huge highlight from what I've experienced. I think that that's one of the most important things, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree because if you're not engaged with the story, then there's really no incentive to keep playing.
Exactly, exactly. So the graphics can look wonky or bad
Mhm.
or whatever, but as long as the details of the writing is engaging and believable, then that'll
Mm.
carry a lot of other mistakes that you can make throughout it, I think. When did you realize that telling stories was your biggest strength with this? Or is this something that you didn't think about until I asked this question today?
I guess I didn't really think about it too much until you asked this question today. I mean, I kind of assumed that based on the fact people enjoyed the games, that it was one of the things that I was good at. We talked a little bit yesterday about the Ben Jordan series and its early iterations and how the first game I made in 2 weeks and could be played in 15 minutes, but
Mhm,
somehow people still enjoyed it. And I think it was because of the story. Even though it was just a quick little game, it was about going to find the skunk ape in the Florida Everglades. He goes and he meets the ranger who goes out with him and helps him. And then the ranger gets killed and he freaks out. And it was a lot packed into a little bit.
mhm.
And I'm not going to say it was just an award winning story or anything like that,
Yeah.
but it wasn't boring. That has always been my drive, is to make sure that players are having fun, and part of the reason that I think players should be having fun is because they're engaging with what's being presented to them, and they want
Mhm.
to continue seeing what's going to happen next. And through characters and through dialogue and stuff, that's how you tell a story.
If you ever got to a point where you had more of a team around you, would you do that or do you prefer to be a solo developer? And if you would you choose to try to stay with the writing side of things over any other aspect of game development?
I have been in this position before with Shardlight. I mean, it was a two-person team, but it was someone else doing the art, and I focused on the writing and the design and everything, the coding. For my own sanity, I probably should focus more on being on a team, but my own selfish need to control everything is just too overpowering, and so I prefer being a solo developer. Also, from a perspective of sustainability, it makes more sense for me to be a solo developer because I have the abilities to do these things. I've gotten to a point where I feel comfortable enough that I can do them well. So the money that I save from having to hire an artist or whatever other aspect I might want to outsource, I save that and I keep the production costs low for myself. In a dream scenario where it wasn't a problem and I was like, money's no object, you have unlimited budget, here's your team, I would probably focus on the writing and the narrative aspect. I would definitely delegate the art elsewhere because as much as I love doing art and I love doing animation, I like doing the writing a little bit more. When you are working with other people, it gets you excited about things when you see something that you yourself weren't expecting or didn't work on. I feel that way when I get a new piece of music and it enhances a scene now because this scene that I've seen 100 billion times playtesting now has this cool music backing it and it just breathes a whole new life into it. Same with the voice acting. When the characters finally start talking, it's like the best feeling in the world because even though I wrote the dialogue and I was there when it was recorded, the scene with the characters playing off of each other just brings it all to life in a different way, and that's there's no greater feeling than that.
If you can share with us, what kind of projects are you anticipating working on now that Rosewater has released?
I'm going to apologize in advance for this answer, but it's the right answer. It's not necessarily a good answer, but it is the truth. So
That's okay. We can handle the truth. You are free to start drawing now. It's like an ocean and a desert. Or maybe just a sandy beach, actually. My prediction for this is that you are going to take a vacation. You have 10 more seconds.
Okay.
Perfect. Perfect time. I'm taking this as you're taking a vacation. Let's take a look at this and see if I'm right. Taking a nice vacation and sipping on pina coladas on a beach. Hey, you know what? You just released a game that you've been working on for 6 years. I think that's worth rewarding and taking time for yourself. And I know you also just got engaged, so that's other things to be celebrating and taking some time off.
I haven't really had a proper go away and forget about everything vacation for a very long time. I've taken trips and stuff, but they've mostly been to conferences. And while I've socialized and I've had fun, seen friends and caught up with people there, I've also been in work mode because I've either had to be promoting my stuff or I've had to prepare talks and things like that. So as far as just a regular vacation, I haven't really had one in a while, and so I've already got one planned. The tickets are bought. It's happening in May, so I do see myself there very soon, which will be nice. That's what I'm focused on next because I do have the bad habit of being a workaholic,
Mm.
and I told myself, depending on how the game did, which thankfully it's done well enough for me to at least be able to enjoy the summer. I don't plan on even thinking about, well, that's not true because I've already thought about it. But I don't plan on seriously
Yeah.
sitting down and doing any kind of work on any other project until at least the end of August. Yeah.
It sounds like you have vague ideas floating around in your head, but nothing that you're going to take time to solidify for quite some time.
I mean, I already know what my next 2 projects are. That's a habit that I kind of got into from the Ben Jordan days because since I knew I was doing a series, I always wanted to know what I was doing next. And the thought of finishing something and not having something else to work on terrifies me.
Mhm.
So I like to have at least one project in the pipeline to consider. And at this point, I'm like 99.9% sure that that's what I'm going to do next. So it's just a matter of when I sit down and start working on it. And I can tell you now that it is not going to be another 6-year development cycle. I'm limiting myself to 2.5 years max.
I bet as a creative, you have ideas that are popping up in your head periodically. Do those plans ever change more than you expect? Or by the time that you wrap up one project, do you have a pretty solid idea of what the next one is going to be?
There's always room for flexibility, but I have a pretty solid idea in broad strokes of what the next project is going to be. Like when I finished The Golden Wake, I had already come up with the idea for Shardlight. When I was finishing Shardlight, I already knew that I wanted to make a detective game. The details of it being like a 19th century alternate history steampunkish detective game happened as I was developing it, but the core idea was there. And while making Lamplight City, I was like, well, okay, I want to explore more of the world. I want to make a Western. Lamplight City came out in September of 2018, and I didn't start working on Rosewater until January of 2019. But in those intervening months, in addition to doing technical tests to see if I could up the resolution and have a good workflow, I was also formulating ideas, basic ideas that I put in a document, and then I fleshed them out later when I actually started working on it. The idea of I want to make a Western was always there. The idea of I want to make a
Mhm.
detective game is always there. And the idea of that I have now for what I want to make next has been there for a while.
Well, I'm excited to see what we get next. Time for our final question today. What would be your word of advice for new people playing your games for the first time?
This is going to be a weird one, but okay.
That's half the fun of this, right?
Yep.
You can start drawing now.
Oh my God, it made a weird shape again. Okay. No worries. We'll get this.
Oh, it's definitely a door. It looks like a flipped table. I think that's supposed to be a brain from what I know
Yeah.
before. You have 10 more seconds.
Okay, this is really bad. All right.
Okay. Something about thinking. Thinking that you have to be too smart, probably. But I have a little bit of background knowledge about this. And then I can see that that's like adventure game expert. It still looks like a flip table to me. though. Maybe not think that there's going to be the same frustrations that are like blocking things. That's my best guess. I like the little brains. Leave your adventure game expectations at the door and have an open mind. That makes sense. It's this mind that's split in two.
It's an open mind, and it's a box that contains something that is AG expectations, but I ran out of time, so it just says expect.
Oh yeah, there isn't an R there, but my brain
Yeah.
like
No, it could be an R. It's like a little it looks like it's just a slightly tilted R.
So you would just advise new players to come in without the expectations of any prior adventure games that they've seen or played and have an open mind. It sounds like with your games, and also from my experience just playing Lamplight City, that you try to push yourself beyond the boundaries of stereotypical expectations and also what you've done previously.
I guess this particular response is geared towards people who have played adventure games before, but I guess also towards people who may not have played an adventure game in a while and have a particular preconceived notion of what the adventure game genre entails. It always makes me sad whenever I hear my games described as being retro or a love letter to the classic genre. First of all, no one's written a love letter in whatever. What does that even mean anymore? I'm not trying to recapture nostalgia. I'm not trying to stick to the classic design tropes. But there was a review in a major publication of Rosewater that said it's a classic adventure game for better and for worse. And that made me sad because it's really not, though. It does have some adventure game mechanics because it's an adventure game. But it doesn't have the classic stuff like dead end situations or unfair puzzles or anything like that. And one of the biggest critiques I get from veterans of the genre, shall we say, is that the puzzles are too easy. And that's because a lot of the times they're in self contained areas or they're logical or what have you. I don't think in this day and age, like that kind of design doesn't make sense anymore because the internet is a thing. People don't have the attention span. People have backlogs of hundreds of games. So if you lose a player, you're not getting that player back. And if a person rage quits your game because it's like, well, how was I supposed to think to use the banana on the fortune teller? That design doesn't have a place in modern adventure games anymore, I don't think. I'm not the person to talk to about complex puzzles. There might be a way to do it. I'm still trying to figure out how. So, as far as the open mind thing, if you are a hardcore fan of adventure games and you absolutely must have hard puzzles, you're not going to find them in my games. I ask that you come in with an open mind because I feel like there's more in my games to enjoy beyond just puzzles. Ask any fan of the genre about their favorite classic games, and they'll tell you it's because they love the characters, or they love the humor, or they love the setting, or the writing, or whatever. But very few will say, "Oh yeah, I really loved that puzzle in Monkey Island where you have to use the mugs and transfer the grog. That's actually my favorite puzzle in that game." I don't tell people that I love The Secret of Monkey Island because of that puzzle. I love The
Yeah.
Secret of Monkey Island because it's a fun game and I love the characters and I love Guybrush. So I feel like if you play my games and you're open-minded about it, then I think, yeah, you'll enjoy them.
I think I agree with you too that I don't know if this is exactly what you're trying to say, but some of those puzzles and those kinds of things from adventure games are the worst part of them, honestly, especially when it
Mhm.
comes to the expectations with Moon Logic. A lot of times you want to be playing an adventure game for both fans of the genre and for anybody that may be new and trying to dip their toes into it. You want to play it because you are being told an interactive story, and it's good if that interaction isn't off-putting. So for you
Right.
to not have these big barriers to entry, then you have the chance to focus more on your writing and your storytelling and really bring that to the forefront of everyone's attention. Are there any shout outs that you would like to give to people that you've worked with and team members as we wrap up our interview for today?
Yes, I would like to give a shout out to my composer, Mark Bennis, who I've worked with on both Rosewater and Lamplight City. He is a fantastically talented musician. He has also leveled up his skills in amazing ways. I mean, I thought his score for Lamplight City was great. I think his Rosewater score, he's really outdone himself. He's great, and I really enjoyed working with him, and I hope to work with him on future projects as well. I want to give a shout out to fellow adventure game developers who have had releases close within the past year or so. Julia Minamata, who released The Crimson Diamond, Adam Riches, who released Locomotive, Joe Richardson, who released Death of the Reprobate, Goloso Games, who released Inspector Waffles, and of course Dave Lloyd from Powerhoof, who is going to be releasing The Drifter, and Liviu Boar, who's going to be releasing Near Mage very soon. I always forget somebody, but those are the people I would like to shout out for right now. Oh, Alex Canaris, I don't know how to say his last name. It's Greek and very hard to pronounce. But he
That's
released a game called Mythwrecked not too long ago, which also is really cool. All these people are also very supportive, and we all support each other. It's a great little community, and I could not ask for better people to surround myself with when going through the anxieties and traumas of releasing a game.
Thank you for taking the time to speak with me again. Thank you for your flexibility with me losing all the footage. Thank you so
Oh,
much,
of course.
honestly,
Thank you.
for that.
Thank you. I'm glad that we made it happen.
Me too. I'm very excited about that. If you haven't had the chance to yet, you can play Rosewater's free demo on Steam, or you can pick up the full versions of Rosewater, Lamplight City, Shardlight, or Golden Wake on Steam. You can also support Grundislav Games on Twitter, Mastodon, Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, or via his Discord channel, which I will leave a link to in the description and in a pinned comment at the top of this video. Until next time, keep it colorful.